Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to tune up and show you the Penn 103C. Now this one was one of a flea market find. It came in a bunch. One of the issues is it's got a wobbly rotor. That's probably just because the nut on top of it isn't tightened down all the way. But otherwise it seems to work okay. There's a little bit of a grind in it. We'll see if that's lubrication, if that's worn gears. The bail works and it's complete with the exception of a side plate screw. So it probably was around $5, I don't know, something like that when you put all of them together in that lot that I bought. But let's take it apart. Let's show you how the reel is made. Let's show you why it's a favorite of a lot of folks. It is the Silver Series. It was back in the 70s and the 80s. It's a metal cased reel, single ball bearing, and it stood the test of time. And this one, for the most part, is in pretty good condition, save the wobbly rotor here. But didn't lose a lot of paint. These things are notorious for the paint loss on them. And overall, it's attractive, and it can certainly go fishing again. So I like to start by taking off the exterior pieces, and we'll start with this spool, and we'll see what's going on with that rotor. Yeah, that's it. So it's simply a matter that this nut has come loose. A lot of the modern day manufacturers will put a clip on this, or at least put a screw to prevent this from rolling backwards. But the problem that you have with these reels is that this reel is going to rotate in a clockwise direction, and the screw is going to come off in a counterclockwise direction. So a lot of times it almost unthreads itself with the turning of the reel. So I can take that off my hand. That tells me that the problem with this upper portion anyway is simply that that nut was not tight. Okay, we're going to take that off. You're going to take your rotor off. There's going to be a little cleaning going on here, so let's get ahead of ourselves and just take a quick shot of some. I use a little penetrating oil, and as you'll notice as I'm doing this, I have a protective glove on, and I also use a parch tray. It's the bottom of a milk jug, and that parch tray helps me keep all of the pieces in a central place so that when I go to reinstall, I know where they are. I'm just checking the bail now. That seems to be operating fine, so I'm going to take a little reel oil, put a drop of that onto the lever, put a drop on each seam inside. We also got a little bit of dirt going on inside the little arms there, so I'll just do a quick squirt. I'm going to use Purple Power for that. It's a general degreaser. It's a concentrate. I find it's an automotive product, but I find that it helps get some of the grease off. Now there's no way in the world that this one's going to be restored to its beautiful original finish or anything like that. The whole idea here is just get it back out fishing. It's kind of what Second Chance Tackle is all about, giving tackle a second chance to go out and catch some fish. Okay, so that's pretty good. Seems to be working fine. If you wanted to practice the trip, you can just take the arm down here, and if you have enough strength, you can hit it. I probably don't have enough. There you go. So it tells you that that's working fine. Let's go over and take the handle off now. Oh, we need the rotor on to do that. This is a screw off handle here, so you just want to turn it backwards in a clockwise direction. That's going to free the handle. We'll go inside and we'll see if there's any issues going on in there. There seems to be something moving up and down here. Not quite sure what that is. Something seems amiss with this piece here, but let's get underneath and give it a look here. Okay, 2 screws on the side plate. Let's take both of those out. That's a flat-plated screwdriver. I believe you could get it with a larger Phillips head, but for now, the flat-plated is going to do fine. Take the bottom one off as well. Then I want to take the ratchet off up top here because there's something moving here. Just want to make sure we're okay with that. We are. This is an eccentric style. It's going to pull this back in. It's hard to see that way, but it's going to pull it back in. You can kind of see how it's moving. It's just dirty, so we'll leave it at that for the moment. Okay, we have a basic setup. We just did one a little while ago on a Japanese reel, and this reel is made in Japan as well. We did it on a reel called the Maxim rather, M-A-X-A-M. It was a no-name kind of a reel, but sure as heck it had about the same setup as this one does. It has a bushing on both sides. It has a crosswind arm, and it has a pin holding the crosswind arm into a crosswind block, and that pin is also holding the axle shaft in. So we're just going to continue to do this. We're going to grab the back end of this, make sure that this is clean, and we're just going to transfer the bushing from the one to the other. Now, I've seen some people that have replaced that bushing with a bearing. That's something that you can do if you have the measurements for it. I typically have not done that in the past. I just let the reel be what it is. Okay, I'm going to remove the crosswind arm then, clean that off while we're at it. There's some oils on there. So a couple of things while we're doing this. One of the things that I've recommended already, I talked about, that glove will keep a lot of the dirt off of your hand. The other thing that I recommend is taking pictures along the way so that you can remember the orientations of the pieces and parts should you get lost along the way. Okay, we can pull that pin out, and that's why I use a parts tray, because that's an easy pin just to roll off your table or your desk, and if it does, then you're going to be searching for it for some time. Once you do that, then you can pull the axle out, and you can tell this reel hasn't been serviced in a while. It's got a lot of junk on there. Just want to wipe that off with a paper towel. If it was stubborn, if it was coagulated or anything, grab a piece of steel wool and just do that. The steel wool I have is a 4-0 steel wool. It's a very fine, it's the finest of the steel wools. It's not very coarse or aggressive, and you don't want coarse or aggressive at this point. Okay, then once we do that, we can pull the main gear out, and we'll see we got some cleaning to do on this one. We also have that crosswind block. It's got a little junk in it. Then we'll come up top, we'll take these pieces and parts off, and we'll see if we can't pull that bearing and clean this up. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to stay with that, the bushing come out of the other side plate. Just stay with that theme of just cleaning the pieces as we go and putting them in the tray. Just going to grab another paper towel here. Just going to use the back of a screwdriver here to get the old grease out. And I'll switch over to a cotton swab or a piece of the paper towel or something like that to make all this work nice and clean. While we're doing that, I'm checking the teeth on the gear. You did hear a little bit of a grind. I want to make sure that all the teeth are okay. You're going to check it both ways. You're going to check the teeth in terms of height here. You're going to check them to make sure there's no teeth that are injured, bent, or broken along this ring. These are fine. We'll put this back in. Now let's go over here and deal with the upper part. And this is always questions I get because some folks will take these apart and not remember how they go back. So we'll show you here. So the first thing we'll take off is the dog. That's held down by a screw. And we can see that eccentric that rides and operates the dog is hooked in on the bottom here. So you want to see if you can't pull that whole assembly off at the same time. And then I wanted to show you underneath here. There's a hook underneath here. That's how the hook goes in. So I'm just going to clean off all the dirt there. We're going to continue to do just what we were doing with the other piece. Alright, we're clean on that. So that's the way this is going to sit up top. Underneath here then we've got some more dirt. We're going to clean that up as well. Just want to make sure that it operates freely. If it's dried grease, it's going to impair the operation. So this is going to ride that way on the assembly. I'll have this riding on top of the pinion gear, and this will be hooked inside like that. Okay. And then of course the screws in the middle there. Underneath then we have the spring that's seated that's going to hold the override ratchet. We're going to let that one go. There's no need to remove that or anything. And then we have the one bearing in the reel here. So we're going to go pull that off. That can be either a flat blade or a Phillips head. I'm going to go use the Phillips head for this one. Now these I'm not putting into my parts tray just because I'm going to go grab these right away and put them back after I'm done servicing the bearing and cleaning up the main gear or the pinion gear. But if you were going to walk away from the project, by all means you would want to do that. Also notice as you take this clip off, it's not symmetrical. There's an indented side for the override here, so when you go to put that back, that's the way you want to lay that out. And then we should just be able to pull the bearing and the pinion gear off. And now we're just going to clean both. So first thing I like to do is if there's a lot of grease on there, just kind of get it off with the towel. Next thing you can do is clean the channels with a pick, a finishing nail, a pin. And that's just in case there's some sand or other obstruction in there. Just want to get any dried grease because that as we mentioned, there was a little bit of a grind in there. That dried grease will come away with that, and then we can flood it with, in this case, a penetrating oil. We can move over to a hard brush like a toothbrush, or in this case it's just a bristle brush. Kind of stay away from the metals. I don't want to scar them with a wire brush, but these hard brushes are perfect for that. And we're good to go there. And I'm just going to remove the bearing. I want to give it a spin test. It's a little tight. I'm going to do two things with that. I'm going to hit it quickly with this just to rotate it a little bit, this penetrating oil. I want to just see if we can't free that up a little bit. And then we'll give it a good drink of oil while we put that back on. Okay, so we're done with the pinion gear. I'm going to go grab a brush and some reel lube. In this case I'm going to be using a Penn Precision reel grease. Now this happens to be a Penn reel, so there's no debate here, but I'll use this Penn Precision reel grease on just about every reel that I have. Folks have asked me about you know, what kind of greases should they use, and my basic take is you need to use a fishing reel grease. Don't spend your time using other products. It's just not worth it. They're cheap enough on Amazon. You can get the reel grease and reel oil for about $10 for a 2-ounce package, and that's plenty for several reels. Don't waste your time using general purpose oils and greases. They don't hold up as well as those designed for marine applications. Alright, so we've greased this up, put that bearing back on, and when I seat that I'm going to put some nice drink of oil in it. This case is pretty clean, doesn't need to do anything. There's a little bit of some grease in the back there. I'll just grab a cotton swab, see if we can't get it out of the channel. And sometimes it needs a little bit more than that. I'm just going to use that same pick we were using before to clear the channel to get that little bit of dried grease out of there. And we'll grab that brush and just put a little bit more grease in there. There's a little bit of grease on the shaft that operates the override, so I'll go do that. And just a drop of oil into the channel there, and a drop of oil up top here is fine. And then we'll go back in and we will take that bearing assembly and we'll place that back in here. There we go. You have to be careful with these. These are tight tolerances, so what happens with these is if you're not careful, they don't seat properly. Okay, and then we're going to grab this one. We knew it was a different side based on where it was. So I'm going to clean up the little bit of obstruction there. I'm going to reseat this. We can grab those two screws, the little ones that I always have trouble with, and we can put those in. They'll hold the collar down. So these 103Cs, very popular. They were one of the first times that Penn went overseas to have their manufacturing done. This one was made in Japan. Since that time, it's almost all of their stuff is made overseas now, certainly since 2005 when they moved their plants to China. So, but this one certainly predates that. It was, as I mentioned, the 70s or the 80s. I don't know specifically. I can find that out, but I just I didn't do that work before deciding to do this video. So I guess we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, now we know the collar came in with the hook, and that's going to rest on top of the shaft. And then we know the hook falls around the stud on the back here and sits over the as such, and then our screw goes on that. And now we're a lot cleaner than we were before. We don't have the impact of the dried grease on there. And all we're trying to do right now is just center that sleeve on that screw. I have the wrong screwdriver in my hand, that's okay. There we go. And then we can test. And you can see that it's working the way it should, moving it in and moving it out. So we're good there. Next up then, you want to hold your hand on the bottom of this pinion gear when you go to put the rotor back on that's sliding right now. We'll put our main, oops, I didn't put the click ratchet in. That's the beauty of this parts tray, has that click ratchet that belongs here. And that's the way it sits, so you can see how the dog will slide in on this. If you put it the other way, it would bounce off, but it wouldn't sit. Now we can put our nut on and we can make sure that it's nice and tight as opposed to what happened before where this thing slipped off. This is a 13mm nut if you're wondering, and you want to set yourself up ahead of time if you have this wrench. Or if you have this wheel, you can get the wrench, and I'm going to tighten this a little bit extra hard just because we know it slipped off in the past. We'll give it a spin, make sure that it's spinning properly, which it is, and we can actually throw the bail at this point, make sure that the bail trips too. Alright, we're going to go back now, and we're going to take that bushing that belongs in the backside case. We've lubed the top up, put a little bit of grease where that crosswind block is going to go, put a little bit more in there. Now we can grab our main gear. We've cleaned that up. We're going to do the same thing we've done with everything else here. Is we're going to grease it. Now you don't have to get grease in every tooth. As this thing spins, it will distribute the grease, particularly since we put some grease onto the pinion gear. So just go ahead and put that in. Now in this case, you could have pulled this gear out without pulling the axle out because of the way that the crosswind gear is driven. But in a lot of cases, you will see a secondary smaller gear on the back here, and that drives a crosswind block, a crosswind gear. In this case, that's not the way this reel was designed, so you don't have to worry about it. But as a habit, I tend to put that main gear in first. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there. Just wipe it off. If you put too much grease on, it's just simply going to slide and just kind of accumulate up top here. There's no advantage to that. And we're going to grab the crosswind block. Now this is a good time, if you didn't remember, and I don't, if you didn't remember which side was up, it would be a good time to go grab that and put it back. I'm thinking that it's probably the other way. No, let's try it this way. If we get caught, then we're going to go back the other way. that seems right. I'm going to grab our pin, put that in the hole, and I'm going to just spin this to make sure that I have this low. This was our crosswind arm that we had removed earlier. Put a little bit of grease on that and a little bit on that pin. Now this one has two sides. It has a dull side and a shiny side. I remember the shiny side was up. If you didn't remember, you could go back and take a look. Alright, now we'll see if we've got the clearance. Yep, we have the clearance on the crosswind block, so I guessed right in terms of which way was which. Alright, with that done then, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the shim washer off. That shim washer holds the crosswind arm in so that it doesn't pop off of that. There happens to be two of them on here. That's also an adjuster. I'm going to put the case back on. Now I'm missing a screw. I tend to find one before I take it fishing. But for now we're just going to put the two in the way they came out. And then we'll just go up and take a look at the drag set up top here. Make sure that they're clean as well. And then we're going to send this one back out fishing. So we know that the bottom's done. We've cleaned it up. It's a rather simple design. That's one of the reasons why they don't break that much, because there's not much to break inside. Like I said, I have seen from time to time where, yeah, we're doing fine here. I have seen from time to time where the paint and everything has failed, but the internals have been pretty good. All right, there's a pentagon type clip in here. You want to just grab something to push behind that. You want to hold your hand on the spool so that that spring doesn't shoot. That's the clip that you removed. And then I like to use a pick, small screwdriver, something. Now these should be Teflon washers, and you don't need to do anything with Teflon washers. But on top drag reels, the top drag reels take the brunt of the water hitting it, so that channel usually gets dirty. So I'm going to just take a paper towel for now. Just make sure that it's good to go, which it is. And then the way I removed that stack was from the top. So this is the top. We have to invert that to get it proper going back in. So it's a Teflon washer followed by a metal washer followed by another Teflon washer. Now folks ask me, should they lubricate Teflon washers? And the answer is no, they're not required. Teflon is a petroleum product, and as such it kind of self-lubricates. They also don't wear down very much. Alright, that's the last one, is the metal top stack. And again, hold this, it's a spring, it will shoot. And you will spend time looking for it if it does shoot. So just make sure you get it in all of the grooves, as we did here. And go put that back on. Oops. Here's the value of that parts tray again. You need your click rotor. And there's these two little adjuster washers. A lot of folks ask me why are they there? They're simply to hold down the click ratchet. And the answer is no. They're there to adjust spool height. So if you have a spool where the line is gathering towards the top and not as much on the bottom, sort of on an angle, or where it's gathering on the bottom and not so much on the top, then you add or subtract those little washers, and that'll eventually get it where it spools evenly. That's the case there. We've got our drag knob with a little, looks like a spider web. I guess this thing's been sitting on a shelf for a while. A little bug got in there and did something. And now we can tighten that back up. And while you're never going to be able to restore this to its former luster because of the paint fade and that little button there does shine up nicely usually, so I'm just going to use a little bit of that cleaner there to put this back. We're good. I'm going to give it a crank. There you go. So it has the typical feel of a single ball bearing reel. This thing is built like a tank. Checking the anti-reverse, making sure that we've installed that properly. This is built like a tank. It'll take a beating out there and it'll still fish. There's nothing wrong. Oops, there you go. Alright, there we go. Sometimes those bales get a little bent out of shape. This one looks like it's okay. It looks like maybe I was just a little too weak in flipping that. But the single ball bearing wheels are solid. The plastic bushings from time to time will elongate and you'll get a little wobble or a little grind. This one's doing fine. The last thing I'm going to do then, I'm just going to throw a drop of oil into the handle. I'm going to use that penetrating oil just because it'll free it up, and I'll come back later and I'll go put another drop of oil in. I just want to make sure it's nice and loose. So that's it. That's your Penn Reels 103. There's also a 103C, which is the later version of the reel. They're both essentially the same. And if you have one of them, you now know where to tune it up. This is interesting. I think somebody changed the spool because it reads 103C on the bottom and 103 on the spool. Usually it'll read 103C with a match set. So somebody's probably changed the spool out on this one, which is fine. And I imagine what happened there was that folks wound up with looking for a spare spool that they could quick change, and they bought the 103, which fits equally well. All right, so please subscribe to this if you like the videos. I post frequently, and subscribing is a way to keep my channel vibrant, and it's also a way to keep these videos coming. So I would appreciate it if you subscribe. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.